there, Celeste here, and today we are going to be talking about the great carbohydrate advantage. Yes, you heard me right, the great carbohydrate advantage. In our society, it is a common misconception to fear carbs and to think the only way to lose weight is to cut them out completely. This couldn't be farther from the truth. In this video, we will be talking about the difference between healthy complex carbohydrates and less healthy versions like refined carbohydrates, processed carbohydrates, the ones that we are trying to help our clients eat less of, and the ones we are trying to help our clients eat more of. We'll then talk about why, the benefits behind eating more complex carbohydrates, and finish by giving you some practical tips so you can bring them into the Cardinal kitchens and help improve the life of our clients. So let's get to it.
Low carb, keto, paleo, Atkins are all recycled diets that preach a low carb, high fat diet as the key to weight loss. This idea, although popular in our society, is far from the diet of healthy, long living populations such as the blue zones, the epidemiological study that I covered in our previous video. Low carb diets may help someone lose weight quick, but the research shows it isn't sustainable or healthy long term. A fun fact is one of the originators of the low carb movements, Dr. Atkins, was considered obese for his height at the time of his death and had a history of serious heart problems, including heart attack, congestive heart failure, and hypertension, all linked to a high saturated fat diet. So we have to ask ourselves, do we want to take advice from somebody who is suffering from the things that we are trying to avoid? Now let's look at the difference between healthy complex carbohydrates versus the processed carbohydrates we're trying to avoid. The vast amount of research shows carbohydrates in the form of whole grains, potatoes, beans, veg, and fruit are beneficial to the health and longevity of our body. We need to let go of the diet dogma and understand that carbohydrates are our brain's main source of energy. So let's get clear and see the difference between complex carbohydrates and refined carbohydrates. So complex carbohydrates that you see on the right are full of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds. Foods that we can recognize as something that exists in nature. These foods are packed with beneficial nutrients, vitamins, antioxidants, and fiber, which are so important for not only our physical, but our mental health. These protective nutrients protect us against chronic illness like cancer and heart disease. Let's look on the other side. Processed carbohydrates, or refined carbs, have undergone substantial modification. This process strips them of their nutrients and fibers, bleaches them, and combines them with chemicals and other additives. Usually these products have a lot of salt, sugar, and fats added, which make them irresistible to stop eating once we start. It's a marketing scheme. This leaves the food nutritionally deficient and high in calories, which supplies our body with too much calories, sugar, and salt, which can negatively impact our bodies or our clients' bodies and play a role in the development of obesity, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and certain types of cancers. At the end of the day, the things on the left are considered junk food versus carbohydrates because of the added sugar, salt, and fat. So don't fear carbs, fear junk food. So the complex carbohydrate column on the right has medicinal properties that are key to fight against illness and achieve optimal wellness. It's not likely that we will avoid these processed foods altogether, but we can learn slowly how to make some of these healthy foods into meals that we enjoy and meals that our clients enjoy, which is a huge step that can change our clients' lives for the better. Also, remember to check labels. Avoid foods that have an excessive amount of ingredients and additives, and try to go for things that have less ingredients on those labels. Studies show that those who eat the most carbohydrates, especially found in whole natural foods like beans, whole grains, fruits, and vegetables, have lower risk for heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and weight loss. The most comprehensive analysis of diet and cancer ever performed was in 2007 by American Institute for Cancer Research, created a consensus report based off 500,000 studies. One of their cancer prevention recommendations was to eat whole grains and beans at every meal. And that is from the World Cancer Research Fund. But it's not just cancer that whole grains can protect us from. It's also heart disease, which is one of our number one killers, so strokes and heart attacks, but also type 2 diabetes. And this is counterintuitive from what we would expect. We always hear if you have type 2 diabetes, avoid carbohydrates. But there's quite a bit of research that shows if we're eating less saturated fat, our body can process insulin better and handle carbohydrates better. So one study of more than 200,000 participants found that consuming large amounts of animal protein increased diabetes risk by 13%, but by simply replacing 5% of their animal protein with vegetable protein, including complex carbohydrates like potatoes and grains, participants decreased diabetes risk by 23%. A team of researchers in 2006 named the Physicians Committee Research for Responsible Medicine partnered with George Washington University and the University of Toronto to test a low-fat, plant-strong diet against a standard diabetes diet that limits carbohydrates recommended by the American Diabetes Association at the time. Participants in the plant-based group lowered hemoglobin, or their A1C, by 1.2 points, which was 3 times greater than the American Diabetes Association group. There are many reasons why complex carbohydrates are so important, as you see here, but one of the biggest reasons is the fiber that they contain. This helps flush out our system and is so important for proper bowel function. So whether somebody is dealing with constipation or loose stools, adding carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, is a good way to combat some of those bowel challenges. The fiber also fills us up, so it prevents us from overeating on calories and contributes to more weight balance or weight loss if necessary. We want to be making about a quarter of our plate coming from starchy complex carbohydrates. So that's anywhere between 1.5 cups to 2.5 cups based on somebody's height, weight, and level of exercise. And one slice of whole grain bread would be considered about a half a cup or 1 serving of whole grains. If you grew up in America, you're used to seeing a plate with a protein, vegetables on the side, and a whole grain. However, I've found when incorporating more whole grains and beans and vegetables, it's often easier to eat in a big bowl, or a rain bowl as I like to call it. So this might look familiar, or you will be seeing this in the house, and it's a template to build a nourishing rain bowl. And these can be a lifesaver for quick meals and have endless variety depending on which ingredients you use and what kind of sauce you make. But to make this really convenient and something you can throw together in 5 minutes, it's important to do a few steps each week or twice monthly to make eating whole grains way more convenient. So it's imperative to do a little simple meal prep, and that's where I'm going to be showing you. So each week or a couple times a month, I bake a big sheet of sweet potatoes and make a big pot of grains. Sometimes I freeze the leftover grains, or I just keep the pot in the refrigerator. So let's get into my simple meal prep that doesn't take much effort but makes a big difference when it comes to eating healthier and more whole grains. I always start by getting some sweet potatoes in the oven, and then I cook a grain. So we need to preheat our oven and line a baking sheet with parchment paper. So set your oven to 400, wash some sweet potatoes, and put them on a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. The parchment paper makes the cleanup super easy. Pop your sweet potatoes in the oven, and you're going to set a timer for 1 hour. An hour may seem like a lot, but you don't have to do anything but let them sit there. And they get super sweet and soft and the best when they're cooked fully. While my sweet potatoes cook, I usually prep a grain. For this video, I'm going to be showing you a few different types of grains. And I also want to point out that instant brown rice is just as healthy as regular long brown rice. Instant brown rice is just more expensive for less, but you also get the convenience factor. I like to just get long grain brown rice and cook a big batch, like I said, and freeze the leftovers, so I save money, and it's still convenient for me to just do this once or twice a month. Instant brown rice has pretty easy directions to follow. You just follow the measurements of water and grain. You bring that water to a boil, meaning you turn the heat up high to bring the water to start bubbling. So once it's bubbling, you pour the brown rice in, the instant rice, give it a little stir, and bring it back to a boil. Once it's boiling, you can turn it down to a simmer, meaning you just turn the heat down to be medium low, and you put on the cover and set the timer for 5 minutes. Once the timer is up, you can turn the heat off, and you're going to let it steam for another 5 minutes. So make sure to put your timer on for another 5 minutes. Timers are really useful so they prevent overcooking, because when food is overcooked, it turns mushy. So make sure to remember to put your timer on, and once that 5 minutes is up, your instant brown rice is done. They also have microwave directions too you can follow. Now let's make rice from scratch. So you want to get out a big pot and turn your heat to high. For most grains, it's a 1-to-2 ratio, so 1 cup of grains to 2 cups of water. If you're making a bigger batch, you're going to do this 4 cups of rice to 8 cups of water. So you want to stir it, and we're going to bring it up to a boil. Once boiling, we want to turn it down to a medium-low heat to let it simmer. And follow the package directions. Usually it says to set a timer for about 30 minutes. However, this depends on how hot your stove is, so you might have to check it at the 30-minute mark. It might be done, or it might need a couple more minutes. Usually if that timer goes off, I just turn it off the heat and leave the lid on so it steams if there's a little water left. And it should have no water left and ready to fluff when it's done. So the instant rice is faster but more expensive, and cooking from scratch is much cheaper but takes a little longer. An even easier method is using a rice cooker or an Instant Pot. So opening and closing the cover sometimes is the most difficult part with an Instant Pot. You just line up the arrows. You do a 1-to-1 ratio with the Instant Pot, so 1 cup of rice to 1 cup of water. To get more fluffy rice, it's important to rinse it off. So I like to rinse it in the pot and let the rice settle to the bottom before pouring out the water. Once you have most of the liquid out of the pot, you can add in a little less than a cup of water if there's still a little water at the bottom of the pot. Add the pot back into the machine, the Instant Pot, close the lid, and make sure that the valve on the top is on the seal. It says seal or open, and you can make sure it's on seal. And then all you do from here is push rice, and it will do all of the work for you, and you come back and your rice is completely fluffy and ready to go. So this is my favorite option, but it's totally doable to make rice on the stove or in the microwave. When I make bulk rice, I like to add some to freezer baggies in serving size portions, so I have easy access to whole grains whenever I need them. I can either pop them in a microwave with a little bit of water or throw them in my stir fry, and I have grains within a few minutes. The next essential grain that I want to show you how to cook is basic oatmeal. This is a 1-to-2 ratio, so you want to do 1 cup of oats to 2 cups of water. Add some bananas and raisins and bring it to a boil. This is going to make the oatmeal really sweet without having to add sugar. Once it's boiling, you turn it down to the simmer, and it's done in 3 to 5 minutes. And it is so good. Add vanilla, cinnamon, whatever you'd like. I like to make a big batch of this too sometimes and eat it throughout the week, so I can just pop it in the microwave. And this is a better option than using those instant packs of oatmeal. And there's so many different flavor variations. You could do peanut butter chocolate with cocoa powder, carrot cake oats with shredded carrots and vanilla, raisins, banana bread oatmeal. There's so many different flavors. The last grain I want to show you how to make is quinoa. This is a nice grain to cook because it only takes 15 minutes, and it's good cold or hot, savory or sweet. I like to add a little extra flavor if I'm going the savory route with a little broth or better than bouillon paste. So we are going to do the same thing we did with the rice. We're going to add 1 cup of grain to 2 cups of water. Give that a little stir, and then we're going to bring this to a boil. The nice thing about quinoa is it's a complete protein. It's actually made from seeds, but it's classified as a grain, but it's technically a seed. So it's got high vitamin B's, really good for metabolism and strength building. So once it's boiling, you're going to turn it down to a simmer and set the timer for 10 minutes. Once 10 minutes is up, you can turn off the heat, and usually I'll give it a little stir, and if it doesn't look nice and fluffy, I'll just put the lid back on and then go on with my business until it's ready to serve. It should look nice and fluffy when it's done, just like this. I didn't forget about our sweet potatoes. The timer went off and they are done. So we're going to take them out of the oven and let them cool down. You can tell that they're done when they're super soft. You can also microwave sweet potatoes for 5 minutes, but they're not going to be nearly as sweet and delicious as when you bake them for an hour. Sweet potatoes are so versatile. You can have them as dessert with a little maple syrup over the top and peanut butter, or you can have them with leftovers and have more of a savory meal. Sweet potatoes make your skin glow with that golden color. Really, the beta carotene makes your skin look so healthy. One of the blue zone cultures that I mentioned in the last video, the people of Okinawa, Japan, eating the traditional diet, make about 70% of their calories coming from sweet potatoes, and they are long living, healthy. They don't have the diseases that we're struggling with in America. So we can feel pretty good about ourselves when we're eating sweet potatoes on a regular basis.
So now let's come back to this build your own nourishing grain bowl template. As you can see, if we have a grain done or some sweet potatoes done, it makes it much easier to whip up one of these bowls, especially if we have a canned beans, or if you're eating meat, having some chicken already prepped and having frozen vegetables in the fridge. And at a later date, we'll go over how to make a quick sauce. But at this point, having a sauce that you already have in your fridge or in the client's fridge is a good way to add to these bowls. And adding a crunch makes really good texture. So we made a lot today. We made sweet potatoes, quinoa, rice, a few different ways, and then oats. It's not like you do this all at once. You can just simply put in some sweet potatoes while you're watching a movie, or make a pot of brown rice on Sunday when the clients are coloring at the table. So it doesn't have to be complicated to meal prep. You don't have to make an entire week's worth of meals, but having a staple like a complex carbohydrate, a grain, or some sweet potatoes is a really great start to make sure that you have healthy food ready to be able to serve to our clients. So in this video, we talked about the difference between junk food, processed carbohydrates, processed junk, versus complex carbohydrates. The sweet potatoes, brown rice, quinoa, oats, the grains that look like they come from the earth in the whole form. We learned that how important those are for our health, for our longevity, for our clients' health. They can help us regulate our blood sugars, help prevent some cancers. They help prevent heart disease, stroke, heart attack, and they improve bowels and help regulate our weight. So there are so many amazing reasons to eat complex carbohydrates and to start rewriting our mental story when it comes to carbohydrates, seeing them as something that can help us, help our health, versus something to be afraid of. So I hope you learned something from this video. So I am so thankful for your time, and I look forward to sharing more information about whole foods. In the next few videos, we'll be talking about legumes or beans, greens, nuts and seeds, and vegetables, and fruits. So stay tuned until then, and thank you so much for watching.